All right. So again, today we're talking about topic 2.3, which is the capture and the impact of the slave trade on West African societies. The essential question that we're going to focus on is how did the slave trade impact West African societies and culture? So by the end of class today, we should be able to discuss that. Does that make sense, everybody? You're taking your own notes. Remember, you're taking Cornell notes, mind map notes, Z notes, and what's the other one? Our outline notes. Your choice. Add two things that you feel is needed. You have the Nearpod here. Should be a pretty quick one. Any kind of videos, anything you want to collaborate and take notes on. But then just take some good notes for you understand the material. If I got that? I'm not promising you're going to have a quiz or not. I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you're not. Just make sure you're ready for anything. Yes. Yes, it is. All right. So, who wants to read my first learning objective? Go ahead and read the first learning objective.
Learning objective 2.3a. Describe the conditions of three-part journey enslaved Africans endured during the slave trade.
All right. So we want to be able to discuss a three-part journey. Is everybody got me so far on that?
Yes, sir.
Is everybody got any questions yet? I'm glad you asked that because we're about to talk about it right now. All right.
Also,
qu- I-
so I learned so far a lot of the slave trade was due from like Portugal, like Spanish like influence and stuff. Yeah,
mean Portugal.
Portugal.
Yeah, Spain got into it later, but Portugal first.
But I'm like seeing a lot of like black people having Spanish names.
Yeah,
Just one.
because it talks about where they colonized at, and Spain was the biggest colonizer in the Americas, quote unquote. Okay. Quasi Ann, can you go ahead and read essential knowledge number one for us? This is the first part. Okay. So the first part, you had Africans that were captured and marched from interior states to what? Again, so this is goes back to what we did in Unit 1. Is everybody got me on that? We had, remember we talked, what major society we talked about in Unit 1? Mali, what else? Songhai, Ghana. Now, what early civilization occupied all of that though? The Nok, right? So we talk about the Nok civilization. So we're talking about here is saying that not everybody came from the coast. Everybody got me on that? They actually got a lot of slaves captured in the interior and they moved them to the coast. But remember, that was part of the whole overall trade. Is everybody got me on that? You had slaves being traded for manufactured goods. But remember, was there already slavery in Africa? It was very common, wasn't it? So the idea of trading slaves was nothing new, was it? Now, what happened in the Americas maybe changed, but it was still a very common thing.
It just started to get out of hand. Like I remember in the DBQ we had it started getting out of hand when the population started to increase.
That was one part of it. Yes, you're right.
King Nzana, not Nzana, but it's King Nzinga, remember?
Izinga's coming from DBQ, yeah.
Yeah, and he like wrote a letter to Portugal's king saying, "Stop taking the slaves. We'll trade something else, but not people."
That's right. Because you got different trade systems going around. Now, y'all should be in the near part. Remember, you always can take a screenshot of this, right? Now, Chase, can you go ahead and read A to that? What was the other part? Chase, just read this part right here. Oh, that's right. Chase went out to the thing. The wall. Go ahead and read it for us, A. Okay. And y'all can see what example will be right?
Yeah.
The top picture. Is everybody clear there? Well, these are also recent pictures. Okay. Any questions so far? So remember, make sure you guys have your notes because you will be submitting to CTLS. All right, number two. Let me get actually you. Go ahead and read for us. This is number two. Yeah. So wait, what was the first part? Because a three-step process, right? What was the first part? It was captured, either mostly from the interior, moved to the coast, right? Now the second part, go ahead.
The second part of the journey, the middle passage, involved traveling across the Atlantic Ocean and it lasted up to 3 months.
So the second part is the Middle Passage. Is everybody clear there?
The middle class was a transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah, that's the passage from Africa to the New World. Remember, most of your slaves went where in America? Did they all come to the United States?
No, they
Where
went
did the majority go to?
Cuba, Haiti, all
Actually, South America,
South America.
specifically
Brazil.
Brazil. Brazil had the highest number of African slaves. Because think about this. First off, during this time period, you didn't have motorized ships. If you're taking wind currents, the first place you're gonna hit is gonna be South America. Does everybody got me on that? And then if you want to go north, you have to go take some more, get lucky with wind. So the majority of slaves went to Brazil. So the Middle Passage will be part two. This is where you see the majority of African slaves also dying, or even you have some instances where they killed themselves. I am not showing this to you, but you can make a note and watch it on your own if you want to, okay? Or you can put a link to it if you want to. But to see the visual of the Middle Passage allows you to really understand what was going on. Amistad. If you type in Amistad Middle Passage in YouTube, you'll see the video coming from the film Amistad. And Spielberg did a great job really giving you a visual of what that looked like. Does everybody got me on that? I'm not saying watch it now. If you want to put that in your notes and watch it on your own time, you can. Understand that it's very graphic. Is that right clear there? Amistad, Amistad. You just type in Amistad on YouTube and type in Middle Passage. I'm pretty sure the video link will come up. Watch it on your own time, but understand it's a graphic video. Does everybody make sense on that? Watch it on your own accord if you want to. There's also another scene in Roost where you can show it to you as well. There's videos out there, okay? Now, aboard the ships, Africans were humiliated, beaten, tortured, and raped. Be clear that they were seen as cargo, not as people. Does everybody got me on that? So, if you was a woman, you still had your menstrual cycle. Everybody clear there? If you were pregnant, guess where you probably had the baby at? On the ship. If you had to poop or pee, guess where you did it at? On the ship. And y'all can see how they were packed in. Is everybody clear there? So it's a very high level of disease going on and everything else going on. Now, everybody was from the same culture either. Does that make sense? You have mixing of cultures and everything like that too. So it was not a good process, but 15% of the captives did die. And again, that's approximately. Is everybody got me on that? It was so bad to whereas it's documentation saying that trail between Africa and New Americas, you see a lot of sharks. Is everybody got me on that? Because they knew they was about to get something to eat. Everybody clear there? Now, this is a theory I will never forget a professor telling me. Remember, now you know me, I said my background is in meteorology and black studies, right? This is the meteorologist coming out of me. That trek is also known as the Intertropic Convergence Zone. Is everybody got me on that? Where you hear most of your hurricanes coming from. I had one professor say, well, the reason hurricanes are so bad because of the African souls. I'm like, bro, that is not scientifically correct because that's going to happen regardless. But the reason why you care about that, that's also tells you about how hard it could be. Imagine being on this ship getting caught in a hurricane now. Y'all got me on that? And also, you can also talk about the wind patterns. Everybody got me on that? That's why you went mostly right into South America. Okay? Is everybody good with number two? Quickly. You sure? Okay. All right. Number three, the final passage. Let me get Alyssa. Can you start reading number three for us?
Third or final passage, those who arrived upwards in the Americas were quarantined, resold, and transported domestically to decent locations.
All right. So now you got captured, you got sold, you survived the Atlantic. Is everybody good so far? Now you get to this fresh new world you've never been to. Y'all with me so far? The first thing they gotta do is quarantine you because guess what? You're probably sick, right? Which makes sense. You probably it's probably so many different things medically wrong with you. You gotta quarantine and see who could actually be sold, who couldn't. Does that make sense to everybody so far? And then you will domestically trade it into different areas. Does everybody got me on that? Some of those areas now, this something was called. Let me get this out of my head because I'm totally off the top of my head. It was something called the seasoning process. Something called the seasoning process. Who in here cooks? Okay. What do you do with seasoning? What's the point of seasoning? They have flavor, right? To make it taste good. So the idea of the seasoning process when you ask the slaves is to make the slaves be better slaves. Does that make sense to everybody? You're seasoning, meaning you're trying to show them different culture. You also trying to get them to forget their old culture. If I got me on that, you clean them up to where any kind of wounds and things like that get healed. Because the idea is that the better you have the better slave you sell, you don't want to run away. Is everybody got me on that? You want someone that will conform into what you need them to do. That's higher money. That makes sense? Just like the better seasoned food is, you get to charge people more money for it because they keep coming back. The same idea with the slave. Does that make sense with that analogy? So the seasoning process was very much perfected in the West Indies and Brazil, particularly a place like Barbados, which is going to get a guy named Willie Lynch later on when we talk about. Quick question.
What's it called? So like they were like nice to slaves and
I can't say they were nice or not, but the whole idea is to make them a better slave. Does that make sense? Because the better slave you have, the better product you have, the more money you can get. And again, look at the idea if you go watch Roots, the whole idea of Kuta Kinte. You did not want a Kuta Kinte come in because you're not getting as much money because guess what? He still very much remembers being free. Does that make sense? He remembers the idea that I'm not supposed to be here. He's going to give you a fight. But even Kuta Kinte eventually got broke. So I got me on that? Now I'm saying he didn't, I'm not saying he broke his spirit, but broken the fact that, okay, I'm a slave. Let me find a way to work this out. I am still who I am, but I'm still gonna be the slave. I'm gonna work this out, reluctantly or not. But I'm gonna work it out. Does that make sense, everybody? Not necessarily broke his mind, just broke the idea that okay, I'm not gonna be free. So let me find a way to still get that. For Kuta Kinte, if you look at the story, his way of freedom was make sure his kids knew that you are not have to be a slave. Make sense? Always strive for freedom. But he knew that I'm a slave, so I gotta find a way to work within the system. Because every time I run away, they keep doing more, worse and worse. And if you go look at the movie Roots and you look at the book, eventually they cut off his foot, which means, okay, yeah, I know I can't do this no more. We clear so far? But he still fought his fault differently. Quick hand. No, this is not, we're not even at the three-fifths compromise, talk about U.S. constitutional law or anything like that. We're not even there yet. This is well before there's the United States right now. Has everybody got me on that? All right, the second part, the process could take as much time as needed as the first middle passage combined, because the whole idea is that making you a good product where I can make some money off of. That's the whole idea, is economics. Has everybody got me on that? A fresh African off the boat is not gonna be nearly as worth as much as a seasoned one. Everybody clear there? Any questions? Think about this. You can go buy a watermelon right now, and I'm not making connections. I'm just trying to use an example. It first came to mind. You can go buy a watermelon in the store, right? Then go check and see how much it costs to buy a cut-up watermelon. The cut-ups will be more money. Why? It's more seasoned, quote unquote. That makes sense, everybody? I'm not connecting Africans to watermelons, but the watermelon is the first thing that came to mind because I guess I had to buy a watermelon for my family. So that's the first thing that came to mind over the weekend. But any kind of processed food is going to cost more than just the raw material, typically. And don't y'all go into organic. I'm just using the raw idea of it, okay? We good?
so the juicier the watermelon.
Not even that. We're not even looking at that. We're just looking at the idea that I can buy the watermelon myself and cut it, or I can get it already pre-cut. I'm going to pay a little bit more money for the pre-cut watermelon. Whereas I'm me doing it myself. Is everybody got me on that? Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Any questions so far? Nope. All right. So now we're in learning objective 2.3b. Is everybody got me on that? Now we want to look at explain how the Atlantic slave trade destabilized West African society. So now a little bit new learning targets. So if you're looking at your notes, you should have a section for 2.3a. Now you got 2.3b. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? 2.3b, now we talk about the destabilization of West African societies, which directly goes back to our essential question, right? We good so far? All right, Elon, can you read the first essential knowledge?
The slave trade increased monetary incentive to use violence to enslave groups in society.
All right. So the slave trade did what? I'm asking y'all. What did it do? It increased the idea for need for trade, right? We good there? This is a little different than what we normally look at when we talk about the slave trade. We're really focusing on what happens here in the United States. Now we're looking at also what happened in Africa, right? And they wanted to have increase in money. It was profitable. Does everybody got me on that? You got to be clear. It's profitable so much to where wars broke out between kingdoms because of this trade. Does that make sense? Who's going to occupy the trade to make the most money? Human history tells us we love the idea of money, regardless if it's cash, gold, silver, tree limbs. It's going to be valuable. Does that make sense? We like the idea of wealth. Is everybody clear? Yes or no?
Yes.
For better or for worse, wealth always is a guiding force. Okay, especially today. Europeans traded guns for gold. Guns allow African states to expand. Is everybody clear there? And then you got some examples of what the Asante, the Oyo, and the Fawn did. So I'll give y'all a second there. Just so you know, the Fawn is the kingdom from the movie The Woman King. If you everybody watch that on Netflix, the Fawn is based off of that kingdom. Does that make sense, everybody? And if you watch that movie, you're gonna see the trade. Is everybody clear? If you watch The Woman King, first off, that's a darn good movie, all right? Viola Davis did her thing in that movie. I'm being biased, but I don't care. I like that movie. I can't watch it more than once, but I like the movie. That is based off the Fawn people. Is everybody clear? All right, go ahead.
Is it true that the only country in Africa that didn't get captured by slaves or that didn't get into the slave trade was Ethiopia?
I have no idea. But also look where Ethiopia was at. Is at.
They didn't get colonized.
Yeah, I
They're
thought they didn't
colonized.
get colonized, but they were on the like
I'm-
when the Dutch came.
The Italians tried, I think.
Thank you all. Because I'm gonna say I gotta look that part up. I don't know. Yeah, just know that yes, I have degrees in African American Black Studies. My focus was law and politics. That's what I know very well. When we get to that part, I'm gonna go ham. This part here, I learned it, taught it, didn't think about it again. So I had to teach it to y'all. Just being so honest. So a lot of this stuff is coming from notes that other teachers got, and also as you hear me talk, that's me coming back and reading my own notes because I do go back and read my own notes. I got about 3 bookcases just of like all my studies from bachelor's and master's. That's what I'm referring to. Side note, that's why if I tell you something, y'all do y'all see any paper in front of me? This screen is black. I'm really off top of the dome. So if I forget what I said, sorry. It happens. All right, let's keep rolling. All right, so number 2. Can I get Liam? Can you read that for us?
Yep. Coastal states became wealthy through trading goods and people. While interior states became unstable and responsible for the capitalism.
All right, so who won the trade? Who was more popular, the inland Africa or the coast? The coast makes sense because guess where all the trade ports were at? On the coast. Whereas inland, it became more unstable for them because they was getting people an idea of the trade. Does that make sense? The trade impacts everyone. Is everybody clear there? Economic things impact everybody. Who calling me? All right. Let me finish the thought. Dang, I forgot my thought. Yes.
What's it called? How come like China and Japan and India and all them stuff, like all the people, they ain't never got into the slave trade.
They was impacted too.
Like
I'm not gonna get too much into it, but everybody, because it's still a global trade. Does that make sense, to everybody? So other nations is not always talked about, but it's a global trade that impacted everybody. Because think about it, Christopher Columbus sailed to find a certain part, and it wasn't Africa. He's trying to get to India and to the trade that's going on there. Does that make sense? So all of it is still connected in some way, shape, or form.
and we gonna learn about Yasuke.
Not purposely.
You know about
It may be implied, but not purposely.
cool as
All right.
hell.
Any questions so far? Other than, like I said, not purposely. All right. Let me get number 2 read. Let me get Kiki. Can you read us number 2?
To maintain local dominance and grow their wealth, African leaders sold soldiers and war captives from opposing ethnic groups, weakening those villages.
Straightforward, right? That makes sense? Now, so y'all wrote the whole thing down? Maybe not, right? But what's the main thing we should take away from number 2? I'm asking anybody in the class.
Local dominance.
So in your own words,
They wanted to keep
they sold soldiers, right?
So become wealthy.
And because they sold soldiers, what happened to those nations? They got weaker. Think about this. Think about, again, I hope that y'all go watch some of these earlier films, right? If you're selling off soldiers, you're going to become weaker. Guess who you're selling off as well? Your defenders, right? So those nations now become naturally weaker. And sometimes that may have been done on purpose. Is everybody clear there? Does everybody follow? So in some areas of the Americas, this led to a concentration of former African soldiers, which aided enslaved communities' ability to what? Escape and revolt. Is it going to be easy to capture and keep an soldier free? I mean, enslaved? No, because they've been fighting their whole life, right? This is what they're used to. Does everybody make sense on that? And then you capture them and force them into being enslaved. They might conform to some degree, but they still have that warrior spirit, i.e., Kuta Kinte. Does that make sense? Kuta Kinte was a Mende warrior. Therefore, he was still fighting. Does that make sense? He may have found different ways to fight, but he still was fighting. Yeah. So again, go watch Roots. I want to say he was Mende, but the idea is he was a soldier for sure. That part I'm not gonna be positive because it's not in my head. Everybody still with me? Most likely not, but you can watch it on your own. Okay. All right. So now we're going to number 4. Roman, can you read number 4 to us?
As a result of the slave trade, African society suffered from
Long-term instability. Does everybody know what instability means?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
It means inconsistent or like kind of like unstable.
They were unstable. They were constantly in flux. Is everybody got me on that? And then also, their relatives were gone. Now, it's kind of hard for us to understand because again, we haven't experienced this. One day you're talking to your cousin and your mom and your sister. The next day they're gone, and you have no idea what happened. No, not. I'm literally saying specifically what I'm saying. One day you wake up, and again, think about it in this time period. We also talk about the slave trade. One day you wake up, you say, "Hey, mom, I love you," whatever, blah, blah, whatever, right? But then the next day you don't know what happened to that person because they got captured or they got sold. Does that make sense? This was a common thing. That's gonna make your society unstable because you don't know what's going on. Is there a follow? And again, I'm keep referencing the movie Roots. All right. Particularly the second episode, because they really talks about the instability. You spending more time looking for your relative or mourning them because you don't know what happened. Is there got me on that? As time went, they also had a good idea. They probably got captured. Does that make sense? And if you know you got captured, you think you ever gonna probably see that family member again? Now, I'm not saying again, I don't know because I was not in this situation, but I also know that me having elder parents, I'm very aware that one day my parents are not gonna be there. Does everybody got me on that? For example, yesterday is the first time since my parents been sick, I did not call them. Mainly because I didn't call them, I just need to take a break from me. So I got me on that. But also to know that one day I'm not gonna be able to call my parents. Imagine how they feel knowing they probably still alive. You can't speak to them. And there is no cell phone. There is no technology. When they're done, they're done. So I got me on that. Not done, we're gone. I mean, does everybody follow? That psychology affects you, and it goes on for a long time period. Does that make sense to everybody? But that goes back to this idea of long-term instability. Okay, I saw a couple of hands. Go ahead.
So when slavery ended, right? There was like were there like people that went back to Africa?
There are some cases where you saw some people went back, but
Settled in like one area, like just former slaves, or did they disperse to where they were from?
it's kind of hard to say because when slavery ended, quote unquote, was a long time since this. So here's the question of, do you know where you're going back to Africa? And then where you go back to, where they even recognize you? You have that same kind of question now, where you have African Americans say, I'm going to go back to Africa because, I have African ancestry, right? But will you be accepted? Because the idea is that, and again, you ask any African immigrant, you're vastly different than them. You may share the same blood or lineage, but you're not the same culture no more. Is there, I got me on that? Like for me, I'm vastly different than most of y'all because I'm from South Central LA. My culture is not the same as yours. Then ask somebody that's from an African state or a city state, they're gonna be very different than you too as well. Even though you might share the same lineage. Is there, I got me on that? Or the same historical background or the same bloodline, if you will. That's like me. Like I did the ancestry. I know exactly where I'm coming from different parts of Africa. I also know that if I go back, I am probably not going to be received very well because I am American at the end of the day as well. That's the culture that I've been brought up in. Everybody follow me on that? I think it's from the West Coast. It's like 3 places from the West Coast. It's Guinea. I'm trying to look over there, but it's like 3 different places. Now I'm curious again. All right, mine came from Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. So from my mother's side, my biological mother's side, it was Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. Okay, I gotta scan you. Give me your PBIS. All right, let's go ahead and rotate real quick. Move, rotate up to that area real quick. Whoever wants to go, go to the court. Hey, get up and move, people. Anywhere, just go somewhere.
Taking me from my spot. Don't like this. When people like
Hmm?
rotate around.
I know. So the whole point of the rotation is for you to stretch, change locations, and get back alert because I waited too long to do this anyway. Huh? No, I saw y'all drifting away mentally. Y'all were taking notes, but you wasn't paying attention.
I'm gonna be real with you, Dr. Jones, but I take a nap. I got 2 hours of sleep last night.
Thanks for being honest.
You know me. I'm like in the first year. Let's see. Whenever like people got captured, was it at random?
I can't say. I don't know. It depends on what source you look at. But none of us was there, so we never gonna really know.
My grandpa was there.
Yo, great, maybe. All right, let's move on to now 3C. So we should have another set of notes, right? So we talked about the before, how it made things unstable. Is everybody with me so far? Now, be clear. What I'm telling you is what you also should be doing your notes on your own, right? Okay. Even the little breaks is when you should have on your own. Okay. So now, describe the key features and purposes of narratives written by former enslaved Africans. So now your focus is going to be on slave narratives, but specifically African slave narratives. Everybody clear there? Because we will be talking about slave narratives post Civil War later on. Is everybody clear there? We good so far? So now we talk about African slave narratives. Okay. So to get us started on African slave narratives, Eugene, can you read number 1 for us? I know it says 1 3 times, but no, it's 1, 2, 3. Okay. Read number 1 for us. Who we think was maybe the big one helping them out with these narratives? Griots. Everybody got me on that? All right, let me get the second number 1 to be read. Oh, wait, I'm good. Michaela. Yeah, go start reading slave narratives.
Slave narratives serve as historical accounts,
Literary works
and political texts and are examined through
interdisciplinary
lenses.
All right, so you need to understand what a slave narrative is, okay? So slave narratives will be considered a primary source. Everybody got me on that? And the reason considered a primary source is because they come in dark. Put up on your tag.
Oh, slave stories.
I'm not gonna say necessarily slave stories, but they are. You can say that.
Coming from slavery.
But there are historical accounts of saying what occurred. So that means somebody went out and talked to them and recorded it, or they did it themselves. Does that make sense to everybody?
Slave biographies.
Okay. Now, as political texts, slave narratives aim to. Can I get someone to read A? Malik, can you read A for us? In slavery and the slave trade. Corey, can you read B? All right, hold on 1 second, y'all. All right, and now let me get C read by Kumba. Can you read C for us? Can you read C for us? Shh. C, go ahead. All right, so it's also just to try to advocate for them. Is everybody clear so far? Yes? Undergrad's bachelor's degree. Because you got grad and you got post grad. That's why. All right. Probably not now. All right, let's keep going, y'all. Any questions here? All right. Now, text analysis. Everybody hear me? Take out your sheet of how we supposed to analyze text. Take out your sheet. What is it called?
Swag. Spy.
Not spy.
Swag.
You guessing? Anybody wanna help him guess?
SWAFTB.
S what? S W A F T and B. All right. So I'm gonna pull it up too for you.
Swag the B.
Take out your the sheet you supposed to use to analyze your documents. Who has it? All right. I have some people. All right. So this is what it's called. STWC. All right. First thing you want to do, you want to read the document, but you want to do this next. You want to see, think, feel, wonder, claim. You want to see. What do you see? Identify in the source. Think. What does the source make you think about? What connections can you make? Feel. What feelings does the source form in you? Do you agree or disagree? And why? Wonder. What questions of the wonderings does the source bring up for you? And then lastly, what do you think the source is trying to prove or claim? Does everybody got me on that? So what you're going to do, you're going to write in your notes, the title of the source is being brought from Africa to America by Phyllis Wheatley. Does everybody got me on that? Does everybody follow me there? That's the name of your source. You're going to read what she wrote there. I gave you some source notes as well. Does everybody got me there? What you want to do now is your FTWC in your notes. Is everybody clear? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to give y'all 6 minutes to do this. If you don't have your sheet, check with somebody else. Is everybody clear there? Everybody got it? Y'all got 6 minutes put on the timer. Then I'm going to call Popsicle Sticks for you to tell me what your thing is. 6 minutes starts. Right now. Go ahead. 6 minutes. All right. Very good. Very good. That is time. So we are here to talk about Phyllis Wheatley. Yes? Yes, no? Yes, we are. Okay, great job. Thank you for telling me that we are. All right. So I am going to try to read what she said here. This is 1773. But like I said here in the notes, Wheatley becomes the first African American to publish a book of poetry. Her iconic portrait, attributed to the enslaved African American painter Scipio Moorhead, is the first known individual portrait of an African American. Has everybody got me so far? Yes. And what she wrote is this: "Twice mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my biting soul to understand that there's a God and there's a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolic dye. Remember, Christians, Negroes, blacks as Cain may be refined and join the angelic what? Train." Okay, so now what we're using is this as far as our source analysis, right? So I got me on that? The more we do it, the more we get familiarized with it. Now, with that being said, the C part. Mars, what you got for C?
For C, I said that she's trying to prove that slavery was a good thing for her because it showed her the path away from damnation.
Okay, that's her. Well, we're not going to course, we're going by popsicle sticks. So that's her C. If everybody understand that, say yes. Okay, this is all opinion based, right? Is there a wrong way to understand it? No. KP, what do you got for the think? Okay, speak up. Put your head up. Go ahead.
they view her color as, they view our skin color as a scornful eye.
So maybe like stereotypes. Okay, cool. Phil, let me get Nasir. What you got for Phil?
It's that I say.
Speak louder.
It makes me feel sad.
Makes you feel sad. That's fine.
It makes me feel sad, but or it makes me feel sad because like